call the meeting to order.
All right.
Hi,
Good evening.
how you doing tonight?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
All right, you can sit there if you want. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. I'm just about to do that. You can have a seat. It's no problem. Okay, we're ready to call the December 12th, 2019 meeting of the Kingston Zoning Board of Adjustment to order. I'll introduce my colleagues at the table. To my far right is Peter Coffin. Immediate right is Larry Greenbaum, our vice chair. To my immediate left is Secretary Tammy Bakey. This is her last night. We're going to miss her. She's not going to miss us.
I will.
You will, a little bit. And I'm Ellie Alessio, your chairman. I know you've seen the minutes from the last meeting, and do I have a motion?
Move that we, I was still here, I would approve the minutes as written.
As printed, okay? Thank you. Any discussion, corrections, amendments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay. The minutes are adopted officially. We have to wait till 7:05. However, we only have 3 members of the board here tonight.
Okay.
And I have a couple of people traveling for the family issues. I have a couple alternates that I didn't hear back from. Someone else is sick. So of the 8 potential, there's only 3, which means that if we make a decision, it has to be unanimous of the 3. In the case of Camp Lincoln, Mr. Coffin has recused himself.
Yeah, this is a continuation, so I can't join it because it's not a separate action.
Right.
It's
So
the same meeting you had before. So
Right, so we will not be taking any action on Camp Lincoln at all because I don't have 3. Mr. Pasco is the hearing after. He's got some other options.
Okay.
Okay, but we have some questions, I think, on Camp Lincoln, which means that we will continue the hearing for you till 7:05 on January 9th. We have to do that. And you would be the first, since I have to put a time, I'm gonna put you as the first hearing that evening, okay?
January 9th, that was?
It's the second Thursday, and I believe that is January 9th. Let me just double check that, just to be sure.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Tuesday's the first.
The first is a Wednesday, the second is a
Okay, yeah.
Thursday, so 9th, it's the 9th.
Yeah.
And that would be at 7:05. I'm gonna go over a couple things that, we received the 3 sample contracts.
Yep.
That were provided. Could you state your names, both of your names again for the record, please?
I'm Reed Van Coolen, I'm the director over at Camp Lincoln.
Yeah.
And I'm Emily Hughes. I'm the assistant director.
Assistant director. And you're the gentleman in the only house that has a permit on that property.
Correct, yep.
That's significant. Okay, want to start, Larry?
I gotta find the right.
Okay. I'm having a difficult time with the contracts because I'm not sure that's exactly what we were looking for.
Okay.
Okay, although you do have in all of them consistently saying that the lessee agrees that fireworks are not prohibited, and you have to reverse that. You gotta take the not out. For fireworks are prohibited unless it's supplied and discharged by a pyrotechnic vendor.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And all 3 contracts that you sent all had the same phrase, and that doesn't hold, so you have to have that fixed. So you might want to resend that.
Okay.
And none of the contracts address a timeline, the number of nights, nor did it list necessarily the type of vendor, type of applicant. It says weddings, but it said weddings on the file. It didn't say weddings on the contract, didn't refer to weddings, didn't have any restrictions, and none of these addressed any of the health and safety issues that need to be addressed through the fire department. I know you talked about the police, but even that's not finite enough because you could have alcohol on the property for an event that started at 3 in the afternoon and go to 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. And I would think a detail would have to be provided if you have any alcohol on the property for a function. That's my opinion.
And the other point on that was, it says alcohol served. What about bring your own? Does that,
And if,
people are bringing their own alcohol onto the property, who's liable?
Right, I mean, it states in there that they're liable, if they're serving alcohol, they're bringing alcohol, that they have to have liability, alcohol liability coverage, part of their liability coverage for the rental.
I don't think this is clear enough for that, to be very honest with you. I think that needs to be defined a little bit more. And we're not specialists in these types of contracts. We were looking for limit parameters around the types of functions that you would hold on there, the number of days, what you would do for health and safety, like being inspected every year, making sure you had the right either carbon monitors or fire alarms or fire extinguishers, having inspections on a regular basis, annual basis, all that, that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
Your contract with a vendor is technically your business. The type of vendor you have come onto the property is ours.
Right.
You see where I'm going with the difference in that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these contracts are for, someone who's hosting an event at camp. Correct.
It's helpful to have them. I'm not saying they're not helpful, but by the same token, I'm not sure it's addressing the issues that we have for the property.
And this is what we started out with.
Right.
We gave you a copy of the proposal that we had.
Right.
And this seems to be going in the other direction. This was just a proposal for what we could see putting into a permit so you could operate. As far as the contracts go, we shouldn't even be having any input into them. They're between you and your client, your lessor.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things we cover in there is, around the alcohol and insurance, which we thought you
Right.
would be interested in seeing.
Right, and that's true. We do need to have that. That's absolutely correct. But those documents are great to have in the property folder. That's what you're doing, but you could change it any time. You wouldn't have any way to know that.
Right.
But as Mr. Greenbaum said, the permit would have to spell out the restrictions on the property and when. The only thing we've agreed to so far is that your normal camping activities for 3 seasons is a go. We haven't taken a formal vote on that, but we will do that. Not tonight, though. Not tonight. But we do want to get this piece ironed out as well, so that we can wrap it up and go forward. We like seeing you, but we don't want to see you every month.
Agreed. Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't want to come out every
Right.
night, every month either.
Can I get a copy of the compromise you guys had? That was never passed along
Sure.
to me directly.
This is,
Yeah, I can get you another copy. Oh, you have it at home? Okay.
So I guess, what exact form or document would you like to see from us? I mean, we hold ourselves to an ACA standard, which is American Camp Association. So, I mean, we get accredited every 5 years, which is an inspection, and then we're inspected every summer by the New Hampshire, the State Department. So there's already all these regulations we're already checking. I can bring in our documents around ACA, but that's a huge folder.
We're looking for the Kingston Fire Department to say it's okay for you to occupy that weekend and have Timberland come there for an outdoor exercises for team building for 3 days, 2 nights.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have the right bathroom facilities? Are they up to standard? Do you have the correct fire extinguisher, et cetera, et cetera? Again, that's what we're looking for. That's the type of thing we're looking for. Am I correct, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think the fire department I'm just speaking of.
Right, that's it,
Remember,
yeah.
is that their big concern is occupancy.
Yeah.
Total number of people and what you have for facility space coming from.
Yeah. And we.
You gotta
we've
take
done
some
it-
of the things out of your contract and make a list of,
Right.
a checklist.
Mhm.
That's what we're looking at, checklist, what you need to have in place.
Excuse me.
Yep, you go right ahead.
What we need is something clear and brief that we can put into your permit that says you are allowed to do the following. Not,
Not the three
4
contracts.
pages of contract, 4 or 6.
Right.
I mean, so I connected with the chief of fire, the fire inspector. We always do an annual inspection and talking to them, do I need them to sign off on a document? I mean, talking to Chief Briggs, he's happy to sign off on something. He's felt like he didn't need to, it wasn't required, but if you guys need him to, he said he's happy to. I connect with them. We always do an annual inspection in the springtime before we kind of open for the season. With the fire department, they came out, they inspect the cabins we use for overnight, they check out detectors. So it's something we've been doing and been practicing that stuff for many
Well,
years.
that's part of what we would put in a permit.
Right,
A stipulation that you have a fire inspection, a safety inspection, or whatever.
that the police chief would check off that you are required to have officers on duties when serving alcohol on the properties. We would have to have a discussion of what happens, let's say you have a wedding there for a Friday and Saturday night. You're not gonna tell me they're not gonna bring their own alcohol in there, and that's all well and good, but do we have to have a duty officer then? Because there are other liability issues. The contract holds you harmless, it doesn't hold the community harmless. Because you're right on a public lake, and there are people around you. So if someone's not behaving, and things, do happen.
Right, yeah.
Do happen. But we don't wanna get it, we want things clear enough, concise enough, so that you can operate efficiently and effectively, and that we don't have to worry about what's going on in your property, because as you know, even coming to these hearings, so much has changed over the last 25, 30 years, and you have a discontinuation of directors and so forth, and, we know there was lapses in coverage in terms of overnight, but doesn't matter if the intent is to have overnight camping for the kids in that facility. Everyone wants that to happen. It's the expansion of the use that's the issue. So we need to have a checklist of what is allowable and or not, as the case may be. So you need to give us a list of what you want, and then we say yea or nay, or put constrictions on them and go from there. Okay?
All right.
And if we could get a copy of your proposal before, 5 days before, I'd like at least a week before our meeting. So, because we're still during holiday time, we're gonna meet on January 9th, I'd like it by,
Yeah, December.
well, I'd say December 31st, but I'd like to have my colleagues have a week, they have time to look at it, and not just a few days before we convene. Okay? If you can do that, I know it's the holidays, I understand that. And if you tell me you wanna go to February, tell me that now, I'll put you into February instead of January, if that's more convenient.
No, I think we can make it work for Jen.
All right, let's give it a shot for January then.
Cool.
All right? Thank you very much.
Sounds good, thank you.
See you guys soon.
Yeah, have a good holidays.
And to you as well. Okay, I did not bring the folder, I'm assuming you still have that on Mr. Pasco there. Thank you very much. I feel like I've been in and out of that hall so many times already.
You've only just begun.
Wise guy. Good evening. I take it you're Mr. Stephen Pasco from
Yes,
OSP Realty,
Yes,
and your associate is?
my wife Caprice.
How you doing? Okay, this is a public hearing whereby the applicant requests a variance and or special exception to the terms of Article 1044, Section J of Town of Kingston zoning ordinance, and asks that said terms be waived to allow for third apartment in a two-family rural residential zone. Now, earlier I was referring to the fact that with Camp Lincoln, we didn't have a quorum because Mr. Coffin had recused himself because of his rulings on the planning board, but we have 3 board members here. In order for us to go forward, you need to know that you have the option of delaying this hearing until January to have a 5-person board. Because in order for you to get any kind of variance or special exception, all 3 of us have to be unanimously in support of it. If you have 5, you still need 3, but you have two more people that are weighing in on the decision and the discussion. Mr. Coffin, did you want to
Yeah,
add?
I was gonna say, there is another option other than just what's funny tonight, is that he could open the meeting with 3, but, so that we can provide some feedback. If, for example, we don't think that we can reach a decision tonight, that he'd
Well,
have the
first,
opportunity
Mr. Pasco would have to say,
to say whether he wants to go ahead.
continue on with 3 or wait
Yeah.
till next month.
So,
as well.
understanding that things happen, things come up, I've been to many a meeting, and
Yeah.
sometimes you just don't have as many.
Well, I think it's the holiday. I know there are 8 of us,
Tough-
5
tough
regulars,
months, yeah.
3 alternates. We have 3 traveling, 1 sick, and 1 at a family
Yeah.
function, so that leaves just the 3 of us here.
Yeah.
So, and timing, I'm sure, is a
Yeah,
part of it.
understanding that, and time being of the essence for me, as potentially selling this property, I think I'd prefer to at least get the meeting started as Peter, as you suggested, to at least get some feedback here. Has everybody had an opportunity to take a look at this property folder in its
Yes.
entirety?
Not that whole folder, there, but,
This
the
is
only
the
thing I
property
couldn't find
folder.
on here was what year, sorry, I don't know if we're gonna start yet or not.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know what year the house was built? What year the garage was built?
This has gotta be 19, I don't know, 20, 30,
Oh,
maybe earlier. Maybe, no, it probably is
Garage?
earlier. No, I think
Copy of
this is
letter.
18.
You need a copy of this letter from Robert Stewart.
Okay.
Thank you.
so we wouldn't.
No, this has to be going back into the 1800s, for sure, because I think there's a.
Why do you ask that
From the
question,
garage.
Peter?
Oh, because, the zoning went into effect in 72, and if,
Well, it doesn't,
well, I know, but if, for example, the garage doesn't look like,
Garage looks,
the garage has some
70
living
feet.
space. That's the issue. The issue is.
right, yeah, and so I guess it's when the garage was built, and, so,
Does it say it on the property card?
Well, you
I have
misled me
property-
a little bit in the discussion you and I had, because there are
Well,
2 property cards for the 2
let's-
buildings on the property, but you only get 1 tax bill. And
So-
both property tax cards refer to the total value of the property.
Okay,
one
but
value.
before we start off on the wrong foot, which I'm not trying to do,
Okay,
I was explicitly clear that there were 2 property cards for the property, one for the 2-family,
that's right.
one for the garage with the studio apartment above it.
Okay, you called it a studio apartment, and
And,
I
and
see
with
it
all
as-
due respect, allow me,
yeah,
1988 property tax, a 1992 property tax card specifically states as such. I'm going by what I bought and the paperwork in the folder, which has never been disputed by anybody, including Mr. Robert Stewart, until recently, and there's a reason for that. But in 1992 property tax card, I'll pass it around, it specifically says that it's a studio apartment above the garage. And that's where I get my information. I didn't just pull it out of the air.
but doesn't make it a legal apartment. It
Okay,
does not
and I will
make it-
further go into a discussion regarding all this paperwork that says different. And nobody's ever flagged it until now.
Okay, but
Right.
it's because the buck never came to this table before,
It's possible is another reason, which I won't get into.
all right?
But it never came before this table, right? 1992, all the property tax records from 1988 forward show this as a finished space, a studio above the garage. So, for, how many years is that now?
31?
31 years, the town's been taxing this finished space studio above the garage. And just now, after electrical permit was pulled in 2015 for 4 meters, 3 apartments, labeled apartments, and a house meter. 2008, the septic permit was pulled and approved, and right on the paperwork, it says 3 apartments and 2 buildings. It says 3 one-bedroom apartments on that permit. When the 2012 appraiser looked at the property, his comments were, when he denied the abatement, 3 apartments and 2 buildings. So am I to understand that the town of Kingston, which is this big, that everybody knows everybody's business, would just, all this stuff just pass by everybody, and it's been taxed as such for all these years, but it's never been condemned, it's never been fined, the owner's never been fined. People have been renting this apartment for 15 plus years, that I've been told, and the previous owner was made to expand the septic system in 2008 by permit. That got by. They were made to expand it because of that 3rd apartment. And now, all of a sudden, this all came about after I worked on a different property in town. And I, rightfully so, demanded a permit for a property, and I got the permit, and ever since then, that's when all these notes started appearing in the file. But how come all of these documents, the tax records, the assessor, so the assessor's comments don't mean anything? Doesn't the assessor's comment, doesn't anybody see it? The assessor's?
Who's gonna go looking?
So the assessor calls it the 3rd bedroom, the electrical inspector sees it 3 apartments, he inspected the job. The electrical inspector inspected it. There's 3 meters labeled with the apartments and a public meter on site. All of these things happened over all the years, and now all of a sudden that apartment just disappears?
There was a lot
And
of.
how did I mislead you, if I may?
Because you intimated that the 2 property cards had generated different taxes.
They
There's
do.
one- I have 2 buildings in my house.
Okay,
My property, I have an outside garage that
Okay.
could have an apartment if I wanted to on the
Okay.
2nd floor, and the house.
all right, so
I have 2 property cards, it doesn't mean I have 2 tax bills, and
I
1
didn't-
tax bill.
I don't remember ever saying 2 tax bills. You were in the
Then-
car and
then-
I was talking
then-
into driving too.
That's correct.
But they do generate values towards the tax bill.
Well, a finished room would generate a value, it would.
Okay, look, I wasn't trying to mislead you. It's all right here.
Okay.
It's all the
I'll
paperwork.
take that back, how's that?
Okay, and
I'll
I
take that
don't
back.
want to confront you like that. I just wanted to be
I'm
clear.
okay with that.
This is a pretty thick folder. Now, all of a sudden, I bought it as a
We had the property folder
3-family.
here, we have it here, it's
It's
right
here,
here.
yeah, it is.
We have
That's
the-
what I'm saying, but it's a lot of paperwork, right? And all these events happened over the years. This wasn't within 2 years that the septic and the electrical and everything was done, and you can say, all right, fine, they missed it, or they didn't look at it. People look at these things. If I was in Danville, if I was in Plastow, the first thing that happens, as soon as the assessor comes back, especially if there's an abatement request, on the assessor's abatement, on his review, he stated, and he took a look at the appraisal that was submitted by Jennifer Petre, the previous owner, and he saw the rents for the 3 units. He had to review that in detail. The assessors always, when they see an extra unit, any other town, they go back to the selectman and the building inspector and they say there's a problem, there's an illegal apartment. Nobody's ever done that here in Kingston, New Hampshire. How come nobody ever, in all these instances, ever said, there's an illegal apartment, because somebody could have died, right? Somebody could have died in that apartment living there, and nobody, who would be liable? This is,
I'm not laughing at you, I went through this piece of property we bought.
Yeah.
And it was in Massachusetts. They require smoke detector certification.
at the sale,
at
at the time of sale.
Well, the inspection's done prior to sale.
Right, you need it for the closing.
The inspector walked in, fire inspector walked in, and called and he said, you can't, that's not a 3-family, it's only a 2-family. I said, well, there's 3 apartments, 3 rents, it's only a 2-family. There is nothing in any record showing that it's a 3-family house. And
You're talking about your property?
my,
Okay, all right.
and we went through
Hell,
hell.
yeah. But the difference is, when I bought this property, there's all this documentation. All it says is, on the one card, it's 2 units, and on the second property card, which is the garage structure, it calls out the studio. So you have 2 in 1
And you bought it in what year?
in 2015, or 14 or 15.
And you bought 3 units then?
I bought it as a 3-family.
Why aren't you selling it as a 3-family?
I am.
So what's the problem?
He says it's a 2-family, because he doesn't like me.
Well,
I know
that has nothing to do with it.
It does, because everything in this jacket. I'm just a reasonable and fair person. I'm not looking for any problems.
Pascal,
Everything
just
in this
because-
folder says it's 3 units.
How many illegal apartments do you think there are in Kingston?
But how many illegal apartments are all called out on every document? The septic
Probably all
permit?
of them are.
How could they be? Then they should be shut down. There's a liability to the town. If you have an illegal apartment and you don't shut it down, you're at risk.
You're
And
right.
especially if you know about it and you collect the
That's
taxes
problem.
for it.
And usually if something has to trigger a fire or something gets triggered
Yeah,
to
but the-
find out, you know, if we're talking about different departments assessing and.
We are.
So, as far as for building permits, that's usually when it triggers the building inspector to find out. He knows, for example, that in a rural residential, it can be 1 or 2, single family or duplex.
Right.
And,
How about the health department? They don't have anything to do with it.
the health department merely, checks for, septic systems, and it's based on number of bedrooms. And,
It's-
you know, you can have 5 bedrooms
On
in
this
a single family house, so, you know, that's.
On this specific one, it says 3 one-bedroom apartments on this permit. Did you see it?
No, but the point is, for that, you need a building permit for any, to get an occupancy permit, for example. And I just noticed that both buildings do predate, so they're both listed as 1950 construction.
Okay.
The problem is that also means that any construction that took place, for example, the addition of an apartment,
Mhm.
would require a building permit. So that's what's missing from here. So the building inspector can only go look and say, when was it built, and if that garage had been built for that apartment upstairs, there'd be a record of it. You say it was not until 1988 to
Building inspector back then did
88,
it.
90, or 92, but
The building inspector at that
is
time was
when
the
it
one who
first-
built it.
it first shows up, then that's, 38 years. The difference being 1950 predates the 1972, January 72 institution of that requirement of the maximum of 2 apartments. And if this was not put in until the late 80s, early 90s, obviously by 92 it was there. So he can't grant an occupancy permit for something that never got pulled. So there's no inspections done on that apartment because we don't know when it was put in, and it was never inspected. No, the permit was never pulled. So he's looking at permits, and the main house is fine because that was probably built as a
It wasn't, it was built as a
single
single.
family.
It was converted converted to the 2 per the police chief who's on the select.
Oh, yeah, you said that he
board.
had more information.
Yeah, he confirmed, he knows all the history on this property,
Mhm.
pretty much. I mean, he dictated it at the meeting. But it still doesn't change the fact that it's been taxed, and it's all the records, all the triggers were there in the file. So at no time, are you leading me to believe that I have to now downgrade to a 2-family and lose $100,000? And then I'd have to turn around and have a different defense
No,
against.
I'd say you'd have to go a different route. I'd say.
But they told me to go to the selectmen. The lady in the office said, you have to go to the selectmen meeting.
Well,
And I went there for an hour and debated with 6 selectmen that couldn't give me a legitimate answer on any of the,
Did we get news from them?
No, just.
on any of the arguments that I'm giving you. And then at the end, after wasting an hour of everybody's time, they told me they don't have jurisdiction. They don't have the power to do anything. So now I had to go here.
Right.
And now I'm coming here, and now you're telling me I gotta go a different route?
Well, if you let me finish, I'll be
Go
happy to
ahead.
tell you. What you basically need to do is go for a permit to have, to occupy a third family unit in the building, and have the drawings, and make sure that you have the right inspections. I know it's a pain in the neck, I understand.
It's not a pain in the neck, it's a huge expense, and there's no guarantee,
There's
and it's
no-
just another step
absolutely
of
there's no-
aggravation. It turns into a
That would be
lawsuit
based on
then.
us. We'd have to grant the permission first before Robert could get another, for the third apartment in a rural residential zone. So the onus is on us, as the selectman correctly pointed out, we're the only people who grant relief from the
Correct,
from
that's
the
correct.
zoning ordinances.
That's correct.
Robert could, if he goes to Robert again,
Robert can't
can't
do
do anything until we've said that.
Building inspector, we're the only place that you can
I
get the
understand the
the
process.
permission.
I understand the process, I just don't understand how this just gets all pushed under the
I
carpet.
don't know that I can just say, oh yeah, you're a nice guy, I'm gonna give you a third apartment.
It's
I
not
can't-
to be a nice
I
guy. I
can't do
bought it
that.
as this, so you
I
see
can't.
all the paperwork.
Yeah.
If you looked at this jacket and
From
you were
what I-
buying this property, you'd say there is a third apartment there. It's a studio apartment. It's guaranteed, because
Well, we've
all the
also-
documents say it's a
illegal.
free unit.
Yeah,
And
that-
it's
that-
illegal.
But it doesn't say anywhere in the 25 years that it's been taxed that it's illegal. You're collecting the money and then you're saying it's illegal.
No,
Yeah, because
no, I disagree with you. I disagree
The
with you.
tax is based on the assessment of the property value.
but it's including that finished space as a studio. They're taxing it as a
You
studio.
don't have to even charge any rent, you could be living in it yourself, you don't have to charge rent for that living space.
But it doesn't matter. You're collecting you're
It's
collecting
assessed
taxes.
for living space, yes, it's assessed for living space.
It's so it's
In the-
assessed
in
for
the same
living
way- in the
space, so
same
you're
way-
collecting the tax, but it's not
But
legal.
These McMansions are assessed at probably twice the living space that you have in the three apartments, and they are paying a higher tax because, you know, that's
Bigger
finished
space.
living space, bigger space. So it's not based on the number of apartments, they only have one apartment in theory, you know, a single-family house. It's based on the total living space and.
It is, and I get that.
Bedrooms and, you
And
know.
if this was an extension of one of the two apartments you're calling the only legal ones, I'd get that, but this is a detached garage with a studio above it back to 1988, and now you're telling me it's illegal.
It
You
is.
see my,
But
Well,
that's.
but
that's
you're
the-
taking the money for it.
But the,
There's
all these years.
nothing to show that there was a permit issued to build it.
and therefore,
And
they couldn't
therefore-
issue an occupancy permit.
It shouldn't have, or doesn't have, an occupancy permit. You rent it, but in fact, you're renting an illegal apartment. You don't know any better, you see it, you bought it as a unit, and you rent it. But we don't have any record in this folder, wherever, over here, that shows that there was a building permit pulled to build that apartment over the garage. Now, the garage could be built with that space for storage.
Yeah,
And
but-
somebody decided to make it an apartment.
I get it, but Larry, it was Larry, right? It's listed as this
But
on
it's-
all the town
but-
documents, studio, apartment above garage. It's not a finished space above the garage, it's called a studio back
Peter,
30 years ago.
you find the task card from 2003. According to Robert Stewart, that garage has living area for owner upstairs. That's what's on there, and that's listed on the property card from 2003. That does not mean apartment. Maybe it's
But I'm
rented out. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Read the property cards before that.
I'm reading the 2003 property.
Okay. So the ones before that mean nothing. And the ones after that mean nothing.
You know, technically, they all mean nothing. You've been assessed for evaluation of living space on that property. You don't get assessed more for apartments. You might be able to sell more for an
But you
apartment.
labeled it all. You labeled it through the years as such.
And we're doing semantics.
I think I came in here and we started off on the wrong foot because I never claimed anything wrongfully to you. I explained to you my situation, and all the documents that I have in front of me and you have in front of you say the same thing.
Yeah, but you're asking us just to give you a carte blanche okay on that third apartment. That's what you're asking for.
I'm asking for what it's being taxed for and what all the
It's
paperwork
not
says.
being taxed for, we
All the
don't
paperwork
tax for
says
the
it's
number of
it's
apartments. 2003.
2003.
According to Robert's letter, it was 2003.
Okay, so it says
Very
garage
well, we
is,
missed that.
yeah, it says, natural apartment is upper floor of house, garage is living area for owner, termite damage needs, blah, blah, blah. So, Yeah, it doesn't list the number of, just as apartment, singular, yeah, so it doesn't list the number of apartments on this. It says two-family residential. Land valuation.
And there's two property cards, money.
1993, one bedroom above the garage. Do you want this one? It states how many bedrooms too. It's a bedroom.
Yeah, but that's still living,
Bathroom.
that's still living here. I'm not saying to you.
Labels it a bedroom. It doesn't say living space. It says one
Listen,
bedroom
I
in
could-
1993.
I've got two empty bedrooms in my house. I could rent them out at any time, and then I'm gonna
It's the
say,
same extension of your living space. This is a separate dwelling. This is a separate place. It's a separate garage with a studio apartment.
Kind of the same
Just,
property.
just so that, you know,
It's a
counting out
The
of it.
property has a
You're not the-
residential home and a garage, and above the garage was an owner's living space. Now, he's not renting it, he's living in it.
and then again, he may be renting it.
Well,
Yeah, but
And that's what Mr.
regardless,
Papp
If
is
he
saying
was
he's
living
been-
there, it's still not legal, right?
right, not as an
But you
apartment.
called it a living space above the garage, not you. The paperwork calls it a living space above the garage. Let me please.
That's correct.
All right, so it calls it a living space above the garage, that it's for the owner's use. This isn't an accessory dwelling. This isn't an in-law. There's no such thing. When you have a two-family, you can't have an accessory or an in-law. So either way, it was illegal, and shouldn't you know that it's illegal if you're calling it a owner's finished space? So at that time, the building inspector should have flagged it and sent a violation out. You can't have an owner's living space outside of a two-family legally. So he, basically in writing, he called it an illegal apartment. I don't want to go litigious with this, I don't want to get a lawyer involved, but this is not
the assessor that did that.
the assessor, the building inspector. You just said the building inspector called it a finished space. That's what he made the mistake of
He said
writing
it
on
was-
these plans.
He said it was on the card. It's on the letter that I gave you a copy.
Yes, it's also in the property cards though, and that was initiated by him.
And Mr. Coffin just looked at that property card, and it's exactly what it says.
Which isn't the
living
building
area
inspector,
for
that's the
owner.
assessor.
So the assessor in no town will go back to the building inspector when they see an illegal apartment.
That's not part of the requirement.
Probably
They do it all
not.
the time.
It's usually,
They do it all the time. They
it's a
do it in
contract.
Danville, they do it in Plastell, they do it in Hampstead, they do it in all the towns.
It's a
Kingston's
contract job,
different.
so, just to go back a little bit, I know you're feeling persecuted on this one. You are not the only one, as Mrs. Alessio pointed out, nor are you the most egregious. This is only one apartment. We've had a case fairly near you, which was listed as two apartments in the property card for residential. Then a third one appeared by the assessor, nothing was done, and then
A fourth one
again,
appeared.
then a fourth and a fifth
A
actually
camper
appeared.
appeared, a tree house appeared.
But all this was after the owner barred this tax assessor and everybody else from going in on the property. So, again, what triggered that was a fire on the property or some other event. But the building inspector doesn't make inspection visits, assessment visits. So unless he gets somebody comes in and asks for a building permit. In that case, 3 extra apartments were built in this structure without a building permit. And it wasn't until it was discovered because of an emergency event or something that town employees were allowed to come on the property that they discovered this. And that,
But that's an outright attempt from the
that's
owner
to hide.
to increase the
Yeah.
amount of units illegally.
And that's the
This is how I bought it, there's
I
a
know,
big
and
difference
this
though.
this is one of the mitigating circumstances here, is there's no apparent, not in your part at least, no apparent attempt to hide this.
At all.
However,
Right, no,
on your tax.
And that's true, I'm sorry we got off on the wrong, I didn't mean for that to happen, to be very honest with you. By the same token, you're not the first one. We have, first one was situation, but they're cropping up everywhere.
Right, but
Town.
so
Doesn't
what?
make them
So what?
right.
So are you asking me to go somewhere else now to get relief?
No,
or-
I'm not asking you
Can
to
I
do
make
that.
a suggestion? We table this until you have a full board, you have 5 people here, and see if you can get 3 votes.
Well, you sounds like it's a long shot, though, to be honest with you. I mean, I hope that I have more people to get 3. How do you guys feel about this right now? Seriously, taking all this file into consideration, the fact that I didn't create this, the fact that if we walk into that 3rd unit, it's gonna look the same as it looked 20 years ago. How would you feel about this situation, knowing that this is what fell on my desk? My attorney, the bank's attorney, all looked at this, and they saw it the same way as I do, which is 2 units in 1 building and a studio over the garage. No time does anything here say anything's illegal at all.
And we don't even
So-
know if anything's up to code either.
So how do you feel about this situation? My property, not the one where they're adding, I know where they add
Yeah,
units
no, that's why
everywhere.
I just give an example of where we come from, and the hardest part of this is that, well, you know, you'd like us to be able to say, okay, we understand this was done by previous owners, it's not your fault, and we'd just like to grant the variance to make it work. The problem with granting a variance is that, somebody else comes along and says, why'd you deny my variance, or what are the criteria? You have to, I mean, this is something that would be further down the pike here, but you should, you know, look at all the criteria that are needed to meet a variance requirement. It's not just, you know, this is fair, you make it happen. Is there a hardship that's created?
Okay.
And it's all of those, and that's where your attorney can probably give you some good advice
Okay.
as
So-
to how to meet those criteria.
Yeah.
And to draft up something to address all those 5 issues. And
You know what we're referring to by the criteria, the 5
I'm gonna go over the criteria right now if you'll let, yeah.
Sure,
Once you're
sure.
finished, I'm not
yeah,
trying to
no, I
cut
was
you
gonna
off.
say that, and I don't know if we want to give it guidance now to what he should have if he wants to come before the 5-member board, or if we give him some advice on where we're leaning. What I was going with this was that there has to be a good reason for all these criteria in order not for us to say, this is the reason we granted it in this case. Not that everybody who lives in rural residential should now have permission for 3 apartments. You know, that's basically we could change the zoning laws, but we can't. Only the town vote can do that, so. So what you were saying?
Well, I do want to hear your rationale on the 5 criteria, because that's usually how we vote. It is how we vote. It's not usually how, it
I
is.
was gonna say, it's always.
It's always how we vote,
Okay.
number 1. Number 2, I personally probably will want to talk to Robert Stewart downstairs some more.
Yeah,
Only
and-
because, let me finish up,
Yeah.
Mr. Pat. I don't want us to set a precedent here just to automatically say, okay, they've been doing it for a while, we'll continue. We haven't done that necessarily with other properties. And as I said, a lot of these things are coming to light today, and they do come here, and this is where the buck stops. And we have to be fair and reasonable about the decisions we make. We're not gonna say, the heck with him, we're not gonna give it to him just because we don't want to give it to him.
Well,
That doesn't work,
I
doesn't
get
work
it,
that
I
way.
appreciate
And
that.
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I
We-
appreciate that.
So I would rather hear your criteria, I personally would rather hear the criteria and how you explain them. And then I still think you should wait till the full board. I don't know how, at this point, I'm not ready to vote. I am not ready to vote. I really want to talk more downstairs to the inspectors, because whatever we do with you is gonna set a precedent for other properties.
Not necessarily, though. This is
Not
a
necess-
unique
I agree,
situation.
I agree, not
This
necessarily.
is unique,
I
right?
agree, not
Unfortunately,
necessarily.
it's
They're
not
all
unique.
unique. They are all unique.
Well, this is very unique, because you got 30 years of use.
No.
You've got, now, I extended I was told to get the addresses for the
Kathy, you
abutters.
should read your 5 criteria. This is not that unique. You may think so, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
not.
Okay, so instead of going out to my immediate abutters, I extended it out a couple each way, just to be safe, right? And I see none of them here. So I know that this property's been used for 30 years as such, and obviously in the neighborhood, there's no declining values because of this property. Only thing that's happening is properties keep going up. There's never been a person arguing or coming into the town and saying, they have an illegal apartment over there. That's making my house worth less. This isn't happening, right? So there's been no complaints. It's a well-managed property, and it's been here for 25, 30 years that we can see. So the value around suffering for relief, for me, I don't see any property value decreasing, especially in the market that we're in and we've been in for a while. This area has been growing steadily over the years. I hope that we all agree on that. Contrary to the public interest, again, it's been there for 25, 30 years. There's would interest, what would be not necessarily serving the public. It's a single person in 2 different units and a couple in another. It's a very low-key property. There's no activity, there's no illegal activity, there's no police activity. It's a well-groomed property that kind of fits right in there. So as regard to that, I don't see any public interest that's not being served or being disserved by granting this. The denial would result in unnecessary hardship to the owner. Absolutely. You're talking $100,000 in value lost if this unit is not legitimized after coming into this information that we're talking about tonight. Substantial justice, absolutely. I bought it as a 3-family. It's been operated as such for all these years, and it would be an injustice if it's taken away. On the document that went out to the abutters, it said that this was a previously approved variance that expired. What was that? I'm just curious.
That wasn't yours.
No,
Yeah, it was.
No.
no, that was another property.
Have a copy. No, it was ours.
It shouldn't.
Unless they sent it out to the wrong.
Now that's a whole different ballgame.
They
No,
may
that
have
was sent to
they may
us.
have used another,
You have it. Can you pull it
Oh,
up?
you know what?
they used Cleveland.
It's done wrong.
You see it?
I do.
Okay, so you don't have to do it. And I'm not saying that holds
That's
any
wrong.
weight.
We have to send them
It
out
was kind
again.
of deceiving to us to see that that was done wrong.
It was done wrong. I did it. That's my fault.
No worries.
Because I cut and paste from a previous one.
Oh, you did, yeah.
That's what that's
Yeah,
from. That's leftover
yeah.
from a previous abutter notice on a similar situation.
Okay.
Your
So,
abutter- So we can't, this hearing cannot go forward because the abutters have not been properly noticed. Honest to God,
I'm glad you brought that up.
we'll see you in January. I'm sorry,
you know, I'll be honest with you, this is dragging out. I've been tossed from one, now to this one, now we're notified wrong. You have to agree that I'm entitled to be upset here. I need to sell this property, and I've got Robert Stewart holding it up. He controlled the meeting without being at the last one. The members were specifically saying things like, if I were a gambling man, I would think that Robert Stewart meant this. I mean, I was getting comments from the board like that at my last meeting. Listen to the video, and you'll be shocked at the things that they said. This is what Robert meant. This is what Robert, how do you know what Robert meant? Robert's not here. So that's what I got at the first meeting, and now I'm here, and this is what's happening. Now I lose another month, and you already don't like it because we came in with a little bit of animosity, and now here I am. I can't sell my property. Now I'm stuck with a 2-family instead of a 3-family that you've been charging for. You've seen it, all the paperwork, everything says it's a 3-unit, and now it's not, and you're adamant about it, and you don't like it, and I get it. Robert Stewart.
how much are you selling the property for? Can I ask you that?
Irrelevant, $3.99.
You paid $312. You make
Doesn't
good
matter
money.
if I paid $10. That's called real estate. Invest in real estate.
That's correct.
I believe that once this property went on the market, you know how it goes, right? People start seeing numbers. All they care about is dollars. You don't know what goes into it.
True.
And that's not a nice comment that you just left the meeting. I'm leaving the meeting. You're wondering how much I'm making. Come on. It's not what it's not, you can't call that the profit. Yeah, but you just said it at this meeting. That's so wrong. This is gonna just turn into a lawsuit now.
Do you want to continue
And
this?
I have
or
the
you
money
want-
to sue you. So, this is wrong. This is totally wrong. It's all about money, right? As soon as the
Not
property
about-
got cleaned up, I put a brand new driveway in. Somebody called the town, oh, they're selling that property, and then Robert had the problem with the windows, and then all this happened. This is a very small town. As soon as somebody, you know what, everybody knows about it. So it's just wrong. That the whole course of events, it was such a wrong comment for a public official to make.
Before you go, for a point of how you want to continue with this, are you asking to withdraw?
I'm gonna file a lawsuit against the town.
So are you gonna withdraw?
Because the comment and
Are you
everything else,
going
it just seems like money's the object here.
Are you
It's
withdrawing?
not the object
Yeah, but
here.
you shouldn't have said that.
All right,
Well,
that was,
then-
In this hearing, that was so wrong.
okay,
You know what,
Yeah,
you're
I'm
pissed
sorry,
off.
with all due respect, I just wanted to come in here calmly and plead my case.
You haven't been calm all night.
excuse me.
We started off.
Would you like to continue this hearing? We have to have an answer. If you're walking out without continuing it,
She just told me I was making a certain amount on the property.
It doesn't, that's irrelevant, it's
that
irrelevant.
is not a
It's
legal
not germane to the
issue.
issue.
The issue is if you walk out without stating your wishes,
Right.
your lawyer is gonna tell you,
You have to come back.
you have to go back and start over. So I'm asking you, are you interested in tabling this, continuing it to the next hearing, or withdrawing it without prejudice?
You can continue at this time.
You'd like to have it continued?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion, we continue this till the January meeting.
And I'll second it.
Okay, any further
All those
discussion?
in favor?
All in favor? Opposed? See you in January. You know, the legal notice is correct. The butter notice is not. The legal notice is correct.
That's just
Yeah, but that
unfortunate.
doesn't make any difference.
And I did, I'm sorry, I didn't,
You did say if you don't mind, you know, if you don't mind, how much you're selling it for, is.
it was a personal
It
question.
was a personal question, but it was his
He-
opportunity
Yeah,
just to
he
answer and say, I prefer not to say.
And he did say that, and then
He
he,
can't, he
And
can't
then he
sue us for
continued.
that. I mean, I'm not-
Then he continued.
He didn't adjourn.
Yeah,
yeah,
perfectly his right to not answer the question, and
well, yeah, well, we'll renotice it for January.
Yeah.
The legal notice is correct, but the butter notice
Butter
is
notice,
not. That
and-
one
and
sentence
I
is
think
wrong.
we'll have to.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I would not have, I didn't
I
realize it.
certainly am happy that he brought it up. However, we're gonna have to renotice at our expense, the.
That's correct, he's not
yeah,
gonna pay any more.
Yeah,
fees,
right,
that's
right,
correct. That's we're about $1,500 to the good on fees and stuff.
Right, so
So
we're,
it's not gonna be a problem, and,
right.
I'm sorry, Tammy.
well,
One more
even
time.
then, we probably have to, you know, go to the selectmen to get a couple of bucks for the postage, because, it's our mistake, not.
No, they won't, no, what I'm trying to tell you, that
Oh,
we're
we
taking
don't
more
have to worry.
revenue than the expenses.
Yeah,
So that's not gonna be a problem.
Right, yeah.
So we'll have that after camp.
You mean I'm gonna get paid this month?
Dang, that
Only
comes out
if
of
I do.
It's coming out of my paycheck, yeah.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Tammy, thank you for all your service to us.
Yeah,
Really, honey, thank you very much, you've been
yeah, I don't know how
terrific.
you found the time to do this.
Oh, especially when you took
Well,
on this,
yeah. and with this year, with the 4 elections, I said, yeah,
The 4 elections,
four
yes.
elections.
yeah,